biggest thing, what we have seen across in most of the scale brands that we have seen is that there's been, one common pattern. Almost everyone leans in on this understanding of consumer behavior. And that's really at the heart of launching out a very successful brand.
Hey everyone, I'm Michelle, the host of the SaleHoo eCommerce podcast. If you're new here, we interview entrepreneurs, marketers, experts, and people who are knee-deep in the daily grind of the e-commerce world. Our goal in each episode is to uncover the latest e-commerce trends and get actionable insights that you can incorporate into your daily hustle as you build your online business. Today, we're interviewing Barry Sadhu, CEO and founder of Get Mason, a Shopify app that allows you to automate your business and e-commerce workflows without using any code. So thank you, Barry, and great to have you on the show.
Thanks for inviting me, Michelle. Glad to talk to you.
Yeah, no problem. So as e-commerce entrepreneurs, we know there's a lot of work that goes into running a store. We have to manage inventory, update the website with new products, add banners, send out newsletters, run sales, optimize the conversion journey to the best of our ability. There's basically a lot of day-to-day activities to running a profitable store. And it seems like Get Mason can do a lot for you. In your own words, what exactly are the key points that Get Mason can do for an e-commerce business?
Yeah, so I like to kind of keep it more simple for merchants and brand owners. There's, much like you said, there's a lot of things happening that an everyday merchant has to run through, an entrepreneur has to do. And really, it's about helping them do it with the Copilot, which really helps them do all of those using automation. That's what Get Mason does, which is everything from helping you update your inventory, to running your offers and promotions, to adding banners, to making updates for your customers on your storefront. All of that, you essentially need to set it up, and Mason automates that for you so that every day you don't need to go through all of it all over again. That's what Mason helps you do today.
So what decisions does the e-commerce entrepreneur actually have to make? Like you give them the analytics and then they decide how to tweak it. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so one of those key things that we bring to the table is that oftentimes you have your analytics coming in, whether it's on Google Analytics, whether you're using Shopify Analytics. And so you have your analytics, which kind of tell you about how your business is working. But the decisions that you have to make on an everyday basis is about, what product should I show to which merchants? What kind of engagement should I do to visitors who have not yet purchased anything in my site? What kind of offers and promotions that I need to run? And that's like an everyday grind that an entrepreneur has to go through. What we do is that we help you automate that by looking at your analytics data, by saying that, hey, you know what? Consumers have probably not gone through the entire purchase journey right now, or consumers are looking at a specific product, but there are other products that similar consumers are looking at, and you can upsell that to those customers. So what we do is that we set up these automations which help you understand consumer data by looking at your analytics, and then help you automate all of these storefront journeys that help you really drive that purchase from browse to buy, as we call it.
Okay, so what's the length that you would need to know to run a certain feature to know what decisions and how to tweak it? Like, do you give that is that also something that you provide? Otherwise, you can't just be tweaking things on a day-to-day basis, right? You need to let them run first and see how well they do.
Absolutely, yeah. And so the key part over here is that it's while there's a lot of automation happening in terms of how it executes, the control is very necessary, and the visibility and the transparency as to what needs to be done is super important as well. For an entrepreneur, what we do is that we bring dashboards which give them insights on what's working and what's not. So they definitely have the ability to tweak and tune using a no-code editor. And so they actually don't need to learn how to code a website or how to make tweaks in the prices by looking at algorithms. They essentially can say that, maybe here are the set of customers who are probably seen my product thrice, and they're more willing to kind of buy this, and I want to drop them an offer. And that's what Mason can help you do without having to learn how to code all of this. And so from an entrepreneur standpoint, they get to run their business using the way that you'd kind of communicate with an agency of sorts, I would say. And so they have a full control in terms of, say, I want to change prices, I want to change inventory highlights, I want to showcase certain sets of products. They get to communicate those business behavior. And what Mason does is acts as the execution engine today. It gives you the ability to customize and tailor the storefront journeys by saying that, hey, you have bundles which are coming up, you have offers and promotions which go up to certain customers. And that's what Mason helps you do.
Okay. So, yeah, it seems like Get Mason can do a lot of things for someone running their e-commerce business. What would you say is the most important element in today's climate specifically? And what feature do you see most of your users using?
So one of those key things I see how commerce is evolving is we need to understand consumers better before we can start selling to them. Consumers want to be heard, and oftentimes to be able to understand consumers, you need to know them intimately in terms of what the preferences are. As consumers, we're willing to share that information. But if we don't act on that information, if we keep on showing the same products, irrespective of context and intent, it oftentimes becomes very difficult for a consumer to go and decide as to whether to buy this product or not. We make that possible today. So when you say that what's most important for entrepreneurs today in a product portfolio, I would say that start off by understanding consumers better. And so oftentimes lean in on how can I understand consumers by creating more engaging experiences at the top of the funnel. It could be in the form of games, quizzes, or it could be in the form of product recommendations that really make sense for them. That's what kind of makes sense. Now, oftentimes, as you go down that entrepreneurship journey and have more visitors coming in, have more buyers in your website, you can oftentimes lean in on more advanced techniques in terms of saying that, hey, how can I sell more to these people who are already buying from me? And then you kind of lean in on more bundling and upsell techniques. That's what would be most relevant. But these are where I would suggest people start off with. In terms of what brands and entrepreneurs today use us for, we have a wide portfolio of brands, right from very small ones to really scaled out ones, and they have very different ways of using the product on the platform. Early stage brands oftentimes lean in on more engagement playbooks. A later stage brand really lean in on more personalized promotional playbooks. And so that's what brands use us today for.
Okay. And would you say, because you said you have a very wide range of different types of companies, would you say your app is more for those who have hit a certain number of sales or got to a certain revenue amount? Or would you say like very small beginning entrepreneurs can use it as well?
So again, like I said, there is a wide range of apps under our solution suite. So for early stage brands, again, like I said, that the best way is to understand consumers. So lean in on more engagement of consumers. And that's where early stage brands today use us for, using our engagement solutions. As brands mature down that cycle in terms of, hey, I have got a fair degree of understanding of my consumers, but I want to recommend better products to them, or I want to upsell to them. That's when people lean in on more merchandising playbooks. And eventually they lean in on how can I do better pricing and promotions for them. And that's where brands who have hit a certain threshold in terms of revenue and in terms of deal. So we cut across a wide range of solution suites in our portfolio. But as a young entrepreneur, I would say that start off with engagement. If you're a mid-sized brand, look for more merchandising. And if you're a more later stage scaled out brand, you probably will be starting off with something more on promotions and personalization.
Okay. And just wondering what made you decide this business? Like, were you running an e-commerce store before? And from there you saw loopholes? Like, what sprung this idea?
Before this, I was working at this fashion marketplace called Myntra. It was part of this Walmart subsidiary in India. And Walmart had made this acquisition called Flipkart, and they were part of the Flipkart group overall. And I saw this real problems for brands. There's a lot of brands coming up, and they had, we could see how they scaled on marketplaces, but really that scale up on marketplaces was because it was driven by understanding of consumer behavior. And that's how marketplaces really used to help scale up the growth for brands. For a lot of brands who are setting up their own storefronts, oftentimes they lack this infrastructure within their own storefronts, which is that can I help understand consumers, and then can I drive these consumer journeys that drive purchase. That's what really was the origin for us, having seen that problem firsthand, work with over 100+ brands. I think we served over 1,000 odd brands back then, but having worked with a lot of these brands, we saw this very common problem coming across. And that was really the insight that was very personal, having worked with a lot of these brands personally. It was a very personal problem. And so that's really the inspiration behind this.
So it was really like they had problems scaling up, or they had problems from the beginning, or what did you see?
So brands would launch, they would lack understanding of consumers, and the scale up really comes from, like I said, if you don't understand your consumers well, it's very hard for you to know what to build and how to package it for selling to these consumers. And so we started off by solving those problems. And then eventually down the road, we realized that as we got a better understanding of consumers, you really could help select which products really made sense for consumers at what point in time, what kind of offers and promotions really made sense for them. And that was the learning from having worked within marketplaces where they had this engine, what I would say, that really drove the consumer purchase journey from browse to buy. For most brands today, they're setting up their own storefronts, but they are the engine. They are the people who are operating the brands every day, the storefronts day in and day out. And really, they lack this engine infrastructure in between. For us, that was the insight that drove us to say that, you know what, brands today are lacking a critical part of that engine, which would really help them scale their businesses and grow their business methodically. And that's really been the journey for us. Can you bring this engine to life, which really helps them scale up?
Okay, so when you talk about like really understanding your customer, are there other things besides games and quizzes? Obviously, from the games and quizzes, they're really helpful because you can collect the data from them. But like anything else you can do besides to really understand your customer?
Yeah, so I mean, beyond games and quizzes, there's solutions like product merchant recommended products, where essentially you're trying to create recommended products and recommended bundles, upsell bundles. Those are where you also tend to understand how consumers click on them, interact on them. And so you get to see what kind of consumer behavior is happening, which kind of products are both complementary or basically products that go along with another product together as a bundle together. So you get to understand consumer behavior from different lenses. So that's another set of things. You also get to understand consumer price sensitivity, oftentimes by adjusting the offers that you kind of highlight to consumers. And so you try to see whether consumers want a buy one, get one offer, or consumers are more susceptible to a 10% off offer, or consumers are more susceptible to, a gift offer. So you kind of try to also see consumer susceptibility to offers. And those are also behavioral understanding of consumers that you get beyond just what you say, games and quizzes that you get to see on the side. So yeah, so that's how you kind of get a better understanding of consumers.
So it just seems like basically the whole company is just like trying to increase the conversions rate as much as possible for any store based on all this data that they can get from how your consumers are behaving on your online store, right?
I mean, if you look at it, the likes of Klaviyo and all of the marketing solutions that are out there, which really help you personalize the consumer communication part of it, they really help you get offers and communication out to consumers. But once consumers come into your storefront, they kind of see the same store. And again, like I said, you are the engine who's running the store day in and day out. What we wanted to do was that make it easy for the entrepreneur and the brand to really run the store, where the store almost feels an extension of all the marketing that they do today, whether it's on TikTok, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on email or SMS. But when you bring them back to your store, it should feel like an extension of that marketing and that offer that you really communicated, which is personalized for them. How can we make it that shopping journey frictionless? And so that was really the goal for us.
Okay. And in terms of inventory and supplier management, how does Get Mason help in this aspect?
Yeah, so today we don't deal so much on the supply side of things, more on the consumer and the purchase side of things. On the inventory side of things, how we kind of really help you do is that keep your inventory in sync with whatever's happening across your marketplace or your D2C channel or retail, right? So you want one unified visibility into your inventory and how much you're selling where. You don't really want to show maybe an out of stock product to customers and recommend them in something, right? So that's how we kind of ensure that, the customers really get the right recommendations, which are really, they can act upon and they can lead to purchases rather than really being shown products which are out of stock or products which are not yet in stock and things like that. Yeah. So that's how we keep inventory in sync with your storefront.
Okay, yeah. I mean, definitely inventory and suppliers are definitely very important. And that's why with like the SaleHoo directory, we allow beginner entrepreneurs to easily work with the most credible and trusted suppliers from around the world. And the key is that we filter out the suppliers so you only choose from the most trustworthy ones. And plus you have the flexibility to choose from specific locations and regions, including local ones that, can significantly impact shipping times and accessibility. So in your own experience with e-commerce and Get Mason, how do you think something like SaleHoo can help e-commerce entrepreneurs?
I think this is super valuable what you just now mentioned at SaleHoo, because when you're procuring your inventory from a ton of suppliers, you need to know one, reliability, but you also know how long will it take for them to deliver. And so all of these are super important things that help you also deliver on that promise that you're making to consumers. How soon can you ship out the product to them? Whether you have enough inventory to fulfill the demand once you get an understanding of a demand coming in from a particular channel. So something like a SaleHoo really plugs in this gap of what I would say, probably we act very complementary. On one side, we help you drive that consumer demand, but you are kind of helping a lot of these brands fulfill that demand by helping them do the right procurement, the right kind of inventory from the right set of suppliers, which would really help them meet that demand. So I think it's a very fabulously complementary solution. I see it's going to work as a magic for brands which kind of use us together.
Yeah, thanks. And I was also wondering, because like with Get Mason, would you say that it is almost like replacing an agency that can do this for you by automating everything? Or would you say it could work hand in hand?
It does work hand in glove as well, because even as an agency, there's lots more business techniques, because oftentimes once you take away the everyday work, what you start to do is become more creative in terms of how you can really acquire customers, how can you engage customers, and how can you understand consumers. What we do is that we take away the everyday work of saying that, you have a ton of out of the box models which help you understand consumers. But now as an agency, you can start looking at new techniques of saying that, can I look beyond quizzes and games now? Can I look at more enhanced experiences like VR, AR within your storefronts? There's more to be done out there, obviously, on the front, right? We can also look at more engaging experiences for consumers, where you're looking at saying that, hey, instead of static product pages, can I make very dynamic, immersive experiences where I can visualize the product end to end in different settings. So there's a lot more that agencies can lean in on us. And similarly, they can come up with more experimentation in terms of what kind of pricing and offers they can run for consumers. So I would say that while it doesn't replace the entire agency ecosystem, what it really does is that it acts again as a tool that will supercharge their abilities to deliver value for the brands and entrepreneurs, because that's really where we are in the business of. Can we make more value for brands and entrepreneurs and help them scale their businesses? I think agencies are an important part. We probably supercharge both agencies as well as entrepreneurs.
I saw you work with like tons of brands, and can you give a few examples of how you really increased conversions for some of them, whether that's the small ones or the big ones?
Yeah, so typically with small ones, again, like I said, the first thing comes from getting a better understanding of consumers. Once you get a better understanding of consumers, the actionable playbooks around promotions and merchandising really helps them improve. The kind of impact that we see is that usually within 60 days, we see a net new addition of 20% of new revenue for smaller brands. For bigger brands, the impact will be somewhere in the range of 8 to 15%. And that's what we'll see as an impact on overall revenue that we see. But beyond the revenue impact, there's a ton of more impact in terms of the understanding of consumers, because once you get that understanding, you can use it for better marketing as well in your CRMs. And so there's also impact in terms of how you message to consumers, what kind of products do you show to them, what kind of offers do you send to them, and all of that. So that's the kind of impact that we are seeing across our portfolio of brands too.
Okay, and I haven't used your Shopify app yet, but I'm just wondering in terms of, because there's a lot of, I guess, hardships with these like gamify apps or these buy one get one free. One of the things is that it doesn't look very well on the site. Do you do anything in terms of like brand colors or marketing or fonts or things like, how does it actually work to implement on your site? Because that's like a huge thing that people run into.
Absolutely. No, I think this is one of those very key. At the heart of it was basically for us to bring in the same flexibility in terms of everything should be on brand rather than just look like it's a patch on, because then it's a broken experience. And oftentimes nobody likes a pop-up which just doesn't look like your brand, or nobody likes an upsell experience doesn't look like it's from your brand. So everything is customizable. You don't need to know coding. There's interactive click editors, using which point and click editors, using which you can really change the colors, you can switch the color of the buttons, and they're all on brand. So the moment you connect and install the app. The app will itself ask you to set up your brand colors and brand guidelines, and it'll ensure that all of the different kind of experiences that you launch are along those guidelines.
Okay, yeah, I think that's just one of like the biggest problems, like looking for apps that actually work really well with your Shopify site, because you don't want it to look like it was obviously a Shopify app that was just added onto your site, right?
Yeah, and nobody likes to also say that, you know what, my site, everybody's theme and everybody's site is unique. Their brand, they've got their own style, they've got their own fonts, they've got their own color. So everybody wants to look a little unique and want to stand out. And so it's very necessary even for app builders who are especially working on the storefront side, be able to provide that flexibility. We do that. And so that's also, we try to make it easy.
Just in terms of, I think maybe a lot of people are thinking this, like your apps, it seems like it does a lot, but like, will it slow down stores? Like, have you tested it? Because it seems like it can do so much, you know?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very valid point. In fact, Shopify itself used to penalize a lot of the apps. If you've seen of recent, Shopify had come in very strict guidelines in terms of the impact on store performance that your app should have. We had benchmarked ours against all of the apps out there, and typically we have tried to minimize our impact in terms of any kind of a load time. Now, there are obviously guidelines that you can best do to further optimize it. Again, like it depends on the sequence of loading scripts, how many apps you have on your store, what kind of an impact. And so there's a lot of different things that go into the play. But from our benchmarking perspective, what we have done is that we have tried to ensure that we are best in category in terms of our impact, overall impact on store performance. Obviously, you can't have zero impact because you're loading any script, and that's the reality of it. But that being said, scripts are pretty lean. We try to ensure that they load with all the best practices that are needed so that they don't impact the end consumer experience, and they have a fallback loading states. So you ensure that the consumers don't actually get a bad experience in between.
So you have all this data, it seems, from all the companies that are using your Shopify app. Is there ways that you can use all the data to kind of improve your product further? For example, you have all this data about like how to format a buy one get one free look or a complimentary product look or something. Like you have all this data, like are you constantly using this to improve and, you know, improve the app and allow other smaller companies maybe to use it as well?
Absolutely. So we come up with a bunch of templates regularly for each one of those experiences that you kind of get, right from, say, whether it's the templates for running offers or whether it's templates for experiences, which is your, whether it's your welcome incentive template, whether it's a quiz template, or whether it's a template for, say, running a game. We keep up launching a lot of these templates. This is based on best practices that we've seen. So for a lot of young entrepreneurs who are today starting up, they get started on day one by saying that, hey, I can start with a template and later on I can start customizing. Once I get a better understanding of it, I can start making it look more like my own and stuff. So that's how we kind of bring in, also ensure that some of these best practices are kind of used across the entire ecosystem of merchants and not just for a specific merchant as well.
Okay, and what are some things that someone starting out in e-commerce can really like position themselves so that, what later on when they use their app or do something similar, they can easily, like, how do they prepare themselves basically to kind of go down this route on really super boosting their conversions?
Yeah, I think at any given point of time, improving conversions goes down to first understanding consumers.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the starting point of it. Because if you don't understand consumers, it's very hard for you to. It's a lot of trial and experimentation, and you're kind of throwing darts in the dark and hoping something sticks on the wall. And really, like, that's like kind of an uphill battle. And so you've seen that traditionally, the way most CRO agencies, as well as agencies, if have brands improve conversions, is by first defining their ICPs and then eventually kind of going down this route of, hey, we need to run a bunch of experiments, because consumer science is also not an exact science of sorts. That being said, there are some best practices that you need to bring to the table. What we tend to do is that bring a lot of these best practices. That's number one under the umbrella, and that's where the templates library really plays a big role. The other bit of it is that we always say that you start off with consumer understanding and start off with engagement, because if you don't have a understanding of why the customer is coming to your store, what kind of products are they looking for, what kind of offers are they interested in, what kind of bundles are they buying together, products are they buying together. So it'll be very hard for you to kind of make something on your storefront that's really attractive for these consumers to engage with and eventually buy. What we do is that we make it easy. We say that you start off by deploying these quizzes, these games, gets you a better understanding of consumers, and then leverage that understanding to then do these upsells, this cross sells, this product bundles, this product recommendations, and eventually to run promotions. So if you starting off, I would say always start off by investing in consumer understanding, and then go down this route of how do I recommend products to consumers better, and eventually go down this, how can I fine tune my promotions by upsells so that I can make more revenue as well.
Okay, so there seems to be like a very good AI side on your Shopify app. So can you kind of explain how you use AI to help brands?
This last year was this rise of this large language models, and they have had this big impact in terms of how we can do marketing and sales better. And a lot of this content creation is now being easily automated. But the real impact where I see is going to happen with this infrastructure layer that has been created the last year. And this year, I'm very hopeful that a lot of applications are going to emerge, which are really going to drive better decisions in terms of how we run our D2C brands today and how storefronts are really created. What we saw was almost this last decade of bringing stores online. A large part of it was manually operating your storefronts. What you really want as a brand today, running an e-commerce business has also become complicated, because there's not only your online store, there's a lot of your marketing channels that you've got to constantly create content on. There's marketplaces you got to think about, how do I retail products out there? And then maybe there's retail down the road. So there's a lot of different channels that you're kind of selling on and marketing on. What you really need is use AI to be able to automate a lot of these consumer experiences. And that's where today at Mason, what we're doing is that helping you do a lot of that within your own store channels. But really, that's where I see a lot of the evolution in AI will happen for brands today, and adoption will happen rapidly for brands. Brands can make better consumer experiences that feel more personalized. And consumers would love to continue to shop with those brands today who can fulfill that promise. So that's how I see AI playing a big role in the days to come.
But specifically with Get Mason, like what exactly right now, how are you using AI to help the brands, or is it still in development?
No, so today we use AI in two pieces. Of course, beyond the recommendations part of it, where we use AI to understand consumer behavior and recommend products, there's also the quiz engine is a generative quiz engine. So which means, all you need to do is that plug in your store URL, it'll kind of understand what kind of products you're selling, and then start creating questions for you on the fly. Really helps you get started really quickly to kind of make these quizzes, and which are also tailored for you. And so that's really helping. So that's how we're kind of bringing AI to merchants today, which is on the experience front and again on the recommendations.
I mean, going forward, how do you see, like, are you going to be adding more features on your app? I mean, it seems like there's already a lot, but do you think and it really, revolves around understanding your customer and getting that data? Like, how are you going to be adding more features, or are you just going to be making the features work better? Like, what do you see yourself focusing on right now?
So I think the key part over there is what we see the road forward is to make commerce more frictionless for entrepreneurs and brands, where brands and entrepreneurs should really be able to run commerce without having to spend like 24 hours a day in the early days of the business. And oftentimes at a later stage in the business, it's about helping them scale the business on autopilot, almost acting as a co-pilot at that stage. Now, to be able to do that while we are bringing in this AI stack, which can understand consumer behavior and do decisions, what we really want to do is that connect that AI stack with the tools which will help them do that. Today, we have a bunch of these tools. Like you said, it seems we have a bunch of features, a bunch of these are tools for this AI stack, and they work hand in glove along with the brands who are working today. What we really want to make this is a true co-pilot for brands and entrepreneurs, so that, today, if I have to run my commerce channel, I should be able to come to Mason and say that, hey, I want to say that, look at my store, here are the set of the customers who are coming in, and then you figure out what kind of experiences I should be launching out on which channels. And that should all run on the fly for consumers. I can see what's working, what's not, so I can tune and I can give further instructions on what can be done better. But it acts as a true co-pilot for them.
Right. So when you're using that, when people are using it, do they get like some more support from you? Do they get someone specialized? Because I I assume it might be a little bit confusing in the beginning because there's so many features and so many things to do. Is there someone to help get it up and running, basically?
Yeah, so we do have a customer success team, which is always working, merchant success team, which really helps them get started quickly. Beyond that, the app itself is pretty simple to start with because the app comes with a set of recommended apps for you to get started on day one with, so that you know that, hey, I want to start here. It's easy for me. And it asks you a set of questions as to saying that what's the most pressing problem for you. And over a course of time, as we kind of understand your consumers, the consumer journeys in your storefront, we also keep sending you regular recommendations. So there's a merchant success team, but there's also recommendations that keep sending you about what would be most apt for your store.
Okay. And I guess last question, I just wanted to know, because you are an e-commerce entrepreneur and a very successful one, like what do you think is actually the biggest tips that you would give people in starting their stores, and pretty much not just starting, but starting with the mindset to scale?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, what we have seen across in most of the scale brands that we have seen, is that there's been, one common pattern. Almost everyone leans in on this understanding of consumer behavior. And that's really at the heart of launching out a very successful brand. Today, consumer attention is hard to get. So we are all inundated with marketing on all different channels from a lot of different brands. What we want is excellent products, but we also want to be heard about what those products mean for us and how do they really make sense into our lives. So if we get a better understanding of consumers, then we can design the right set of products or procure the right set of products that will make sense for their lives. And that's really what is the starting point, I would say. Start by understanding customers, and then I think everything flows in next. What products to build, where to sell on, what kind of marketing would they love to kind of lean in on. Yeah.
Okay. And just one question. I'm just wondering, and from your perspective, is it more important to get the product right, or to, I guess, get the consumer the understanding of your customer right?
So if you don't have an understanding of your consumer, oftentimes you'll go wrong with your initial products, because you'll be building thinking about what is the product that you're going to build, and maybe it'll have an audience. So oftentimes you'll start off with a product, but you got to think about the customer before building the product. And we are right now starting to see, especially with some of the brands, they're leaning in on doing more consumer research to understand what products. For example, there was this brand that is basically in the health and supplement space. And they initially launched one of the supplements as a pill. And later on, they realized that pill was not what most of the consumers really wanted. They really wanted an alternative, a serum kind of an application and it was health and supplements in the beauty space. So they basically changed their formulation from a pill to a serum, and it worked wonders. So if you get your consumer understanding, they wouldn't have had to spend some time in the for that. So I would say that always start off with understanding consumers before you start building out your products.
Okay, interesting. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the interview.
Thanks. It was a pleasure talking to you, and have a great day.
If you want to get more actionable insights on the e-commerce industry, be sure to subscribe to our SaleHoo e-commerce podcast and also our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening.